Hi, I'm Erik Christian, Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Business Development for Hubbell. Today is the fourth episode in our series called Candid Conversations, and so far gotten really good feedback from folks that are following along and really appreciate those that follow. We've been having candid conversations with leaders in our industry and in Hubbell's organization, and today is no different. We are very lucky to be joined by Ken Carlson, Head of Sales and Marketing for Hubbell Utility Solutions. Hey, Ken.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. We were just talking about your tenure here at Hubbell, 24 years, which is pretty amazing. Maybe talk to us a little bit about being here 24 years, some of the roles you've held, and your experiences over the last, nearly quarter of a century.
We once had a customer service representative that was retiring after about 35 years, and she made the comment that said, "I blinked and woke up 35 years later." And I of course, remember that to this day because it's gone quickly. I guess that means it's been fun, right?
Yeah.
It's been a great ride within Power Systems. I joined 24 years ago as head of sales for domestic, just a domestic business, not the full product offering that Power Systems had at the time. Ohio Brass Chance products, so it was insulators and hardware. They didn't want to give me the full product line. I guess didn't trust my 16 years I had prior to that with Siemens. Joined with an organization that had just acquired AB Chance and Anderson, some product lines. And so we had three different sales organizations that had come together. So to say it was a little bit of pandemonium and a little bit unorthodox and everybody going in different directions would be an understatement. Through the years, kind of added and deleted. I don't know if that had anything to do with my performance at the time or not. Had domestic sales. Added a distribution center at one point in time. So the DC that was shipping products reported to the salesperson. Helped to make goal at the end of a month, right? Tell them to ship everything type of deal. Customer service for a while reported into me. DC left. I picked up our Marcom activities when we had a VP of international retire about 7 years ago. Some reason I raised my hand and thought I could help the organization, even though I had never traveled internationally at the time. And so today, it's a global EU sales, since we're into communication sales and some other businesses, but the electric utility sales and what we generally call marketing services, that customer service and Marcom branding, advertising activities. It's been great fun, great ride through the years.
Yeah, Ken, it's interesting to hear you talk through those various roles in your journey. And it's similar in a way to Mark and also to Gerben in that they've been in one place for a very long time, but been able to have a lot of different roles, different experiences, different challenges along the way. So maybe talk a little bit about Hubbell and the ability to have a career that's not just one thing, but can be many different things over time.
Yeah, I've got an engineering degree and went back to school, got my master's, but I was always looking for an environment where things were changing, right? I guess I had happy feet or whatever else. I always wanted some new challenge the next day, the next week. And certainly the 24 years with Hubbell has delivered that. Always something new and different, whether it was the job responsibility, but even within the sales environment, right? There's always something new and happening within the business, especially within Hubbell. Over the time frame, I think 78 when they first acquired, I wasn't here then, 78 with Ohio Brass. Through that time frame, they've made 30 acquisitions in the electric utility space. So we've grown about 50% organically, about 50% through acquisitions. And so that makes something new and different, right? Our salespeople, we've got to train them and get them up to speed on new product. We have to integrate with that new business unit that we have. And so it's always been, how do you solve a new challenge? How do you take on a new task? And how you excel in that? That's really been just great fun for me, great challenge for me, and mainly because I'm working with great people within the organization.
24 years sales and marketing here at Hubbell, and as you mentioned, years before that with other folks in the industry. How have you seen change with regards to sales in that time period?
One of the, I'll say, fun aspects of the job has been that try to see the vision for where the business is going, especially from a sales standpoint. I think 4 or 5 presidents that I've reported to, Tom Smith, Gerben Bacher, Bill Tolley, maybe Alan hasn't asked the question yet, but I've always been asked, Carlson, what's the sales force of the future look like? I've skirted the answer to that for 24 years. right? We've been able to say, I don't know, tell me where the business is going to go. Tell me the next acquisition or whatever else, because we want to be one step ahead of that. I'll say I wear it as a badge of honor, and it's really for our sales personnel and the rest of the management team. Brian Cerati, our RVPs, both internationally and domestically, to be able to change and adjust. So we've evolved over those 24 years. We haven't had to blow up the whole sales organization, the whole customer service organization, and start over. I see that as a real plus, right? We've made adjustments, we've made changes, we've moved people around here and there, but we've kept our finger on the pulse of the industry and tried to stay with it or ahead of it. Once in a while, a little bit behind, but essentially staying with it through that 24-year time frame. And, I think the results show for it. Again, our growth and our profitability. This is a business, when I started, that was less than $200 million in sales, less than 10% OP. We make more than that in a month, right? We're doing that kind of volume and that kind of profitability. And again, I've just been along for the ride. Hire good people, let them do their thing. I continue to try to remind folks when they thank me for something, I say, hey, I'm just here to try to help you get an order. That's the job. If I can lower the thresholds or, lower the hills and challenges that you have and allow you to interact with the customer base and do your job, we'll all be successful.
You mentioned taking over international responsibilities 7-8 years ago, and you probably don't realize this, but almost exactly 1 year ago today, you and I were having dinner together in the Philippines. Obviously, that's pre-COVID. But maybe talk to us a little bit about doing business internationally and how that differs from doing business here in the United States.
Yeah, I joked earlier about, I don't know really why I took it. I hadn't traveled internationally, maybe once to Germany or whatever else, but, wasn't an international traveler or anything along those lines. But again, took on the challenge because I saw some similarities to where we started with Power Systems back in the 96 timeframe when I started. We had distribution that needed to be upgraded, enhanced. It was internationally, it's primarily businessmen that, own a small business that we're going to marketplace with. That was a lot of the same in the U.S. until the Wescos, the Annixters, the Gray Bars, and everybody else started to take over the industry over the last 10 or 15 years. So I was very comfortable in that environment trying to build that distribution base. We also had a rather small sales organization. We kept wanting to add more managers and less feet on the street. And I thought we needed to have those foot soldiers closer to the customer, if you will. And so we also augmented it with adding sales personnel in key market areas. It's tough market. U.S. is infinitely, I'll say easier. I don't want to make it sound like our personnel have a cakewalk. In the States, they don't. But internationally, we're building product primarily in the U.S., primarily to U.S. standards, and we're trying to compete around the world, right? So if we're quoting insulators in Colombia, South America, there's manufacturers right in Colombia, South America. And so we've got to make product in the States somewhere and ship it down there and be competitive and such. Colombia also has Koreans coming into that marketplace, Chinese manufacturers coming into the marketplace. So it's a real challenge. Within the States, and no different internationally, we're trying to own the end customer. We're trying to have that close, intimate relationship with the end user so they have a preference for Hubbell. Another challenge internationally is, right, we're not on specs for the whole portfolio of products. That Power Systems package that we've put together with acquisitions and internal growth over 20, 30 years is impressive. It's important to the utilities here in the States. You go beyond poles and transformer and wire and cable. Okay, all our other stuff helps put it together. So, we sell a lot of stuff. It helps put Humpty Dumpty back together, all those insulators and arresters and hardware and things. Unfortunately, internationally, we don't have the breadth of spec positions, so we can't leverage 3 or 4 different products at one time like we might in the States. So a real challenge.
Not surprising, I'm sure, to our audience. The head of sales is a fun guy to have a dinner with, but you certainly are. Any fun stories, your favorite story from time in the field and working with customers or being out on sales visits with our Hubbell employees?
Wow, I don't want to incriminate any of them. I still have some time to go with the organization, at least I think I do. There's, a couple of things I'll throw out there. Probably not, you might have been looking for a little bit more fun stuff. Terry Watson, when he joined us about 15 years ago, the first 3, 4, maybe 5 meetings we had with regional vice presidents, Brian Cerati, Pat Jenkins, and others, if we were out to dinner or something, somehow Terry got lost, right? He'd go to the bathroom and we'd stand up and pay the bill and walk out and forget Terry, not on purpose, but just forget him. So I know he probably had a complex for that first 6 months or so, wondering, these guys trying to dump me or something else, and nothing further from the truth. But that happened many times, not on a ha-ha basis, but I met my wife within the business. That's not a funny thing. It's a serious thing. But I met my wife working at Hubbell. She was working for Keyright Cable up in Connecticut at the time, and, interfaced with her on a business basis. And this is the honest to God's truth. Once we sold Keyright Cable, I called her up and, after hours, and, I know she was wondering why she was getting a call from me at that time, and started to say, hey, I'd like to get to know you better, would like to meet you. It was all really was above board, and she hung up the phone. So I got enough courage a couple weeks later to try that again. And this time she listened a little bit longer. Maybe it was a salesperson in me. I don't know. But we then dated for a few years. Again, the company wasn't within Hubbell, and have had a great relationship, a great marriage for the last 19 years. So that's something, if Hubbell gave me nothing else, they gave me the love of my life. So that's something I'm certainly appreciative of.
That's fantastic. As we're sitting here in late September and dealing with COVID and the effects of COVID, I was wondering, how is HUS, Hubbell Utility Solutions, dealing with this new environment?
Yeah, well, certainly from a sales aspect, right? We're not out in front of the customer, especially some of the old school folks, maybe myself included. That's a new environment. I didn't travel on a plane, or haven't traveled on a plane for over 5 months. I've slept in my own bed at home for, those 5 months. I don't think that's happened since probably I was in college or something along those lines. So, a different environment. So we've certainly had to turn on a dime, I'll say, in regards to the virtual environment that, we need to work in today. Everybody takes to that differently. There's some of the old guard, if you will, that are jumping right into it with both feet. Younger folks that are more comfortable in that environment. We've had some success, maybe more so, because some of the utilities don't have as much to do or managing their time better to get product approvals. I mean, we're sending samples to home addresses that we wouldn't have before, getting some approvals on product quicker going through the system. So we have to work with what's dealt us and what our capabilities are. We're certainly looking forward to the opportunity to get back out and interact with our channel partners and end users. Certainly, our environment will be different. We will not go back 100% where we were before COVID, but there's still customer interaction that we need to have and will have, I believe, as we try to get this COVID under control. But instead of driving in a car 200 miles to make a product presentation, let our competitors do that. Let's call up the customer right now, tell them we can do it virtually, and try to get the approval beforehand. So, we're trying to adjust to that new environment. We're trying to adjust to a new environment for us, Salesforce.com, a CRM offering that we talked about for 10 years and finally put in place within this last year. And to a degree, the timing couldn't have come better, because as we're trying to ramp it up and push our sales personnel more and more, we get COVID. And so doing all that now electronically, having the data and information available, is certainly helping. One other quick thing that we did, we put a manager of training in place a year ago. And little did we know that, he'd be pushed into service to put on, some 50 training classes that we've had, with 4,000 customers interacting with in that training, all within a month's time frame. He was up and running in March, April, after everything kind of fell apart in the February, March timeframe. So we're adjusting to that new reality for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier in the podcast that one of the things that you like best about your job is that you have new challenges all the time. And you like being challenged, and COVID, I'm sure, was just another example of a challenge that's very difficult, but something that we have to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of us have been around, okay, we've seen everything, right? They can't throw anything new. And tariffs, we didn't even know how to spell tariffs a couple of years ago, right? And then we were getting tariffs left and right. Some of our competitors weren't sourcing from China. So what's that mean? We're announcing price increases. They aren't. We're trying to hold share while our price is going up and such. So, tariffs come on board. We had heard pandemics, but I don't think anybody really thought to the degree that, COVID could really impact our lives, our businesses. And so, I've stayed away from saying we know everything now. I'm a little fearful of what's coming next, whether it's locusts or something along those lines, but we try to stay nimble. Luckily, we've got, again, a very good sales organization, very strong sales management team, channel partners, and a position in the marketplace that is enviable of everybody else is envious of us because we're a number one share player in most of the products that we bring to marketplace. Now, all that means to me is everybody's running to catch us. And so, we've got to run that much harder each and every day.
So we spent most of our time talking about work, which makes sense. But curious, outside of work, what do you enjoy doing? Maybe just talk to us a little bit about Ken after work.
Yeah, well, it's not Ken after work. I can tell you I was one of 9 children growing up.
Wow.
So family means a lot. Also, maybe that's why I had something new and different every day. And I had challenges every day from brothers and sisters or schooling or whatever else along those lines and such. But
where were you in that lineup of 9?
I'm number 8. I've got a younger brother, but I'm number 8.
Wow.
Position worked out fine. I won't get into, I'm sure there's a whole study about that, but
the psychologists listening to this right now are having a field day.
Yeah, so it's a different upbringing than when you talk to most people today and such. But luckily, Pam and I, we have 3 grandchildren. Unfortunately, a little bit of ways. One's in Columbia, Missouri. So when I get up to Centralia, I can go see him, 11 years old, and then 2 grandchildren, a boy that's in 3rd grade, 7 years old, and a granddaughter that's 4 years old in pre-kindergarten. So down in the Dallas, Texas area. So certainly get to see them. For me, therapy, you didn't ask that, but I'm throwing it out. Therapy for me is yard work. I know folks are going to laugh at that, but, putting a straight line in the grass and not having anybody yelling in your ear, no voicemail, no email, just making sure that line's as straight as can be, is a therapeutic thing for me, right? I do like landscaping and working. I'll try any sport. I'll do all of them poorly. Golf, water skiing, snow skiing, but I'm game for any of those. There's only one person more competitive, maybe 2, Brian Cerati and Mark Mikes, than myself out there. I'll try anything at least once, if you will. So that and, being around family and such is what keeps me busy.
Well, that's fantastic. Ken, thanks so much for being our 4th guest. I've really enjoyed it. I know our listeners will too.
Thank you much. Take care.